Okay, since last week, I sewed this for the kiddo, which he tried it on a day, and he'd said he thought he didn't want buttons, but he did want buttons, so I'm not done with it. I have to sew buttons. But that's what a lot of my creative time went to, and then he dropped his DS, and he dropped it open, so the screen cracked, so he needs a new one. And of course I would just go out and buy it for him myself, but we decided he needs to learn responsibility, so to get a new one he's had to decide if he wants to, how he wants to earn money for it. And he has not touched his Lego stuff for years, so I have been knee deep in Lego stuff trying to get it organized so I can put it on eBay so he can earn all the money from it and get a replacement. So anyway, so I knew I would have nothing to talk about for this video, so I asked people if they had any questions they'd like me to answer. So I'm going to see if I can. I've looked over the questions at least briefly, and a lot of them are things I haven't actually thought about myself, so I'll try to answer them, but I can't promise that the answers will be satisfying. Okay, first over on Tumblr, Sandro Giga asked, what made you start customizing dolls, and do you have a doll that is like a holy grail? Basically what made me start customizing the dolls is when I learned that dolls could be customized. It was the 90s, and Barbie Bazaar magazine was a thing. And most of the magazine was vintage dolls and limited edition dolls and stuff, but there were always little hints of customizing here and there and what could be done. So as soon as I learned that you could customize a doll, I was into it. So that would have been in about, I think I did my first repaints in 95 or 96. So after that, I was all about customizing dolls. And do you have a doll that's like a holy grail? No. I have dolls I wouldn't mind having, but there is not and never has been a doll that I am just raring to get. Like I really wanted a Bandai Sakurana, and then they went on sale, and I got one from Hobby Link Japan for a decent price a couple years ago. But if I'd never ever gotten a Sakurana, I probably would have been fine. Queen of Squids asks, have any favorite fashion inspiration magazine or old books to show? No. Inspiration just happens. I'll find it on the internet, but I don't have any specific books that I go through that are inspiring. Like I said, I don't think you're going to like all of the answers because a lot of them are pretty much going to be, Cosmo Moore asks, what is your favorite piece of doll clothing to make? Anything that turns out the way I want it to. I like, when I make doll jeans, I like having a good pair of 5-pocket doll jeans when I'm done. But making them is not particularly fun, because it's just a lot of little fiddly bits that you have to sew together to make bigger fiddly bits that you sew together, and then you sew other fiddly bits on them, and eventually you have a pair of doll jeans. I won't say it's fun to make, but I like the result of it. Same with making a shirt. Sometimes I actually do put real buttons on a doll button-up shirt. But no. Well, maybe making a super fast skirt, since I can just run the hem through the rolled hem foot on the sewing machine, and then I can just gather the top of the skirt with the gathering foot on the sewing machine. I like how fast that goes together. And I do have a little bit of fun making circle skirts for the 60cm ball jointed dolls, just because I like the way it hangs and the way, if it's striped or plaid, the way it changes the placement of the thing. But I don't know if that's fun. I like the result, but no, there's no one thing that I really think, oh boy, I'm going to make it now. But there's also nothing that I think, oh boy, I'm going to make it now. So I guess that works out. Margot MB asks, do you have a favorite doll? Oh, what's your favorite doll in your collection? Again, I really like my Bandai Sakurana, but I don't do much with her. I'm not sure if what I like about her is the fact that I actually have her, that she was a rare doll that I thought I would never get and then I got for a good price, or if what I like about her is that she's unusual and people don't know what she is, and I can take a picture of her and I'll have people saying, "Who is that?" A long time ago I realized I had a lot of dolls that were just what I called cool to have, which I liked having the doll, but I liked more putting the pictures up and people saying, "Oh, that is so cool." And so I eventually realized a lot of those dolls, if the only reason I had them was because somebody else said they were cool, then it was better for me to sell the dolls or trade them away so the other people who thought they were cool could have them themselves. So, don't really have a favorite doll that I can think of. But if I had to narrow my collection down to like 10 dolls, Bandai Sakurana would be one of them. Alright, so those are the Tumblr questions. Now over on Instagram, there are a lot more questions. Daughter asked, what is your favorite thing that you have sewn? Right now, it's one of the most recent things I've sewn. I really do like this, although I would say I probably do like a little bit more the motorcycle jacket I sewed for John's Wataru out of this cloth. Just because this cloth is a challenge to sew, because if you make a mistake, the hole left by the needle is going to be there forever, so you better not make a mistake. But those are fairly recent things I've sewn. Overall, like the history of everything I've ever sewn, I can't think of anything. Like I said, you're going to be so disappointed that I don't put a lot of thought into a lot of what I do. It's just, I just let things happen. Let's see. Sandra Giga asks again, what's the hardest doll to create and customize? I'm not sure how I would define hard, because like this doll was a lot of things that were new to me. Like I had never dyed a BJD before, and then I did the all over paint to even out her tone, and I'm still getting my own experience with figuring out how to do face-ups on BJDs. But I don't say it was hard because it was fun. Of course, you probably know the saga of putting this doll together, because all the things I thought would be easy weren't. But again, it wasn't hard, it was just unexpected and possibly tedious. A few years ago I painted a stained Monster High Cleo green and then tried to reroute her, and rerouting her for some reason was really hard, so I just ended up like rooting around the edges and giving her long skinny braids. So that might have been a hard thing, but for the most part I have too much fun customizing a doll to think of it as being hard. Pandora asks, what tips do you have for throwing together a Dolls Ahoy-ish doll photography backdrop from simple to complicated? That's one of those things I've never thought about. You know, a lot of my pictures I have that sort of trees and sky background with the curtains, because I just had this vision of a doll photo stage that was literally a stage. It used to be in, not this bookcase, but in a bookcase, so I actually had the curtains up front, and then there was the full depth of the bookshelf, and then the back had another set of curtains and the backdrop, so it was more like a stage. I'd like to get back to having that set up sometime, but right now it's better for it to just be on the dresser because this is full. But backdrops, I like having texture, at least a little bit of texture. You know, I have another backdrop that I made from like leftover packaging materials, but I put it together so it looks like windows and wainscoting and all the flowers at the top. There's a lot of texture in that backdrop. The backdrop I used to use for years is the silver tinsel that was sold for Christmas time. You're supposed to cut it off the header and put it on your tree, the icicles on your tree, but I left it on the header and just made a backdrop so there's this, you know, silver behind it. And kind of busy backdrops because they can help hide shadows. Like my light setup, also I have 2 reading lamps so I can angle them around, but having 2 lamps, 2 light sources is better than 1 because the shadows aren't so harsh. So I'd almost say that the lighting is almost as important, or maybe more important than the backdrop. Of course, also where my backdrop is, it's by the window, so I can get a lot of natural light to it also, which gives a completely different look to the pictures. So I'm not sure if that helps. Like, one of my favorite backdrops is this thing, which this was a, I thrifted a sample book of, you know, you go to the hardware store, you know, like Lowe's or Home Depot, and you look at the books of wallpaper, but they also have books of coordinating. I don't know. I don't know where you go to see it, but it's a book of interior decorating sample cloth, so you can pick out something to have curtains or upholstery, whatever made out of. And that's what this was. I managed to thrift a big book of it, and I thrifted it primarily for the cloth inside. But I end up keeping this back of it, and it has like a slight linen, waxed linen texture. And I just really like using this for a backdrop. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's just, I have backdrops that I like. I mean, I know I have another one that's like a collage because I just like the idea of making collages, so I turned that into a backdrop. So I guess my thing for a backdrop is make something you like and don't be afraid of texture. Josh said he tagged me in a 50 questions, which I might do that some other time, but I got a lot of, I think, good questions from asking people. Zach's dolls, any major doll regrets, either giving away, selling, or not buying? I try to live without regretting things. Especially dolls. Because when it comes down to it, they are just cute little pieces of plastic. The closest I would say is in about 2010, I had decided I would try to get back into ball jointed dolls. I had had a Volks No-No in about 2004, 2005, and then I just didn't connect with it, so I sold it. And then about 2010, I decided I would try getting back into ball jointed dolls. So I looked on Mint on Card, and they were having a pre-order event for Dragon dolls, and I really liked the Dragon doll Zhao sculpt. She has this really like snarky face, just really liked it. And I had her, and I basically painted her face like I would any other doll, just flat acrylic colors, which I'm sure some people could make it work, but it wasn't working. And I was also at the time too stubborn to try painting her face like a proper BJD face up. Again, I know you can paint your dolls however you want, but there's that certain aesthetic of shading and blushing and subtlety in BJDs. So I didn't realize that's why I wasn't connecting with the doll. So I sold her. And then after a few years I started thinking, especially after I got back, you know, finally learned how to do BJDs properly, I thought I wouldn't mind having the Dragon doll Zhao back. So I looked in Alice's Creations, and the price had like almost doubled since when I bought it in 2010, and I thought, I don't know. But then the person to whom I had sold the doll decided that they weren't connecting with the doll either. So I am slowly working on sewing trade stuff to get the doll back. The thing is, that person did not like the little snarky eyes and tried opening them up. And that was the first BJD they'd ever had. They hadn't done that. And part of the reason they eventually decided they were done with the doll is because they never connected with it, because the eye opening didn't go the way they wanted it to go. So whenever I do get the doll back, I will be having a crash course in learning how to use epoxy putty to do face mods while I try to restore the eye shape. So I don't regret getting rid of the doll, but I am happy I'm going to get it back. Phantasm Creation asks, have you made a doll from scratch rather than customizing? Kind of. About 15 years ago, when I got my first tub of epoxy putty, I laid into it. I sculpted a 6 scale. I had the torso and the arms and the legs, and I was just starting to try to do the waking fingers by bending wire and then sculpting over that. And I did this project for a while, and I had a head, although For some reason, I thought I didn't want the head to be strung on. I put like a screw in the top of the neck, and I thought the heads would be able to go on the screw, and that was just really awkward. And I stopped working on it after a few years. I pulled it out of where it was being stored. I thought, I'm never going to work on this, and I threw it away. And a few years after that, I thought, you know, I think I have enough knowledge now that I might be able to figure out the problems I was having with it. But of course, it was gone. So I am thinking about maybe trying another doll. I even have it sketched out. Hold on. So I have ideas for it. I mean, I sketched this probably 7 or 8 years ago. So there probably would be things I would change about it now. But I have this idea, and I have sketches, and I just have so many other things that come to mind that I want to do that I haven't gotten back to that. And I will have to be in just the right mood to get back to it too. Lulu0038 asks, if money were no object, what one single doll would you absolutely love to own? Maybe that's mint stock Dragon Doll Zhao, but overall, I don't think like that because money is an object. And I'm a cheapskate. I could buy a lot more dolls than I do, but I don't. But overall, if money were no object, and we're not talking specifically about dolls, John recently got a dresser. Just a regular old, wide dresser that you normally keep clothes in, and he filled it with dolls. It's like, that is a brilliant idea. I would honestly love, if money were no object, to get rid of this giant, enormous bookcase, because it is useful for how much stuff it holds, but it is this big, dark, looming presence that you can't do anything else with. And I have always wanted to have the wall filled with narrow shelves, like one doll deep shelves, just all sorts of shelves on the wall that you could display one doll deep in, so you wouldn't have to reach around one doll to reach another doll on the back of the shelf. But I could never envision what I wanted below it. I knew it was some sort of storage. I was always thinking just cabinets. But now that John has shown the dresser, that's what I want to do. Money or no object, get rid of this, buy 1 or 2 dressers to take up the entire width of this wall, and then put a whole bunch of little shelves at the top. And the other thing, if money were no object, I would get a laser cutter. Because I know I don't do much with doll furniture, but I have this idea that you could make knockdown doll furniture with the laser cutter. That would be so much fun to assemble and stain and paint. So if money were no object, I wouldn't get a doll, but I'd still get doll stuff. What's your favorite style of painting dolls? Asked Tink because. If you mean me, actually, I only have one style. I'm not good at detailed, realistic paint. If I am good at any kind of doll paint, it's highly stylized, flat colors that I hope look like a vintage doll from like the 60s or 70s. Now, as far as other people's painting styles go, I love seeing anything anybody paints, whether it's also flat stylized colors that are better than mine, or if it's really elaborate, highly shaded, super detailed, realistic stuff. I like seeing anything anybody does with dolls, and my range is not very good to do anything else with dolls. Toucanburger asks, what does your family think of your doll stuff? Do you ever do a customization project with the kiddo? My husband is a miniatures and wargamer, tabletop gamer, so he has a history of painting little plastic, tiny little plastic people and monsters, and slightly less tiny little plastic, cars and planes and things. So to him, it's just the girl version of what he does. So he's never thought there was anything weird about my doll hobby. And of course the kiddo grew up with it. I have had ideas for customization projects with the kiddo, but he he's outgrown them. Eventually I might, if he comes around to it, but for now, no, but I don't mind, because he has his own hobbies, and if I ever come up with a way to make a doll for him to surprise him, I might. Divanna asks, have you ever bought a doll because you felt sorry for it? I thrift a lot of dolls. I see them in the thrift store, and a lot of times I'll think, I need to buy you because if you stay in the thrift store, you're going to get trashed. Or sometimes, wow, you are covered with Sharpie. I need to buy you to save you. So yes, I do definitely buy second-hand dolls, especially because I feel sorry for them. Creative with dolls. How and when did you get into the hobby, and did collecting or customizing come first? What makes you decide on what dolls get to stay and where do all the rest go? I'll be looking forward to your video. Tomorrow's my birthday. Happy birthday. How and when did I get into the doll hobby? And did collecting and customizing come first? I basically never got out of dolls. There were about 2 years in high school when I thought I was beyond dolls. So I gave most of them to my cousins, my younger cousins. I kept a few of my favorites in a box, thinking in the future I will have children that I give my dolls to. And then I'd go like to Big Lots, because Big Lots was really super closeout store then, and you could get some weird high quality stuff. And there would be Barbie clothes, and I'd buy them and say, oh, these are for my future children. And then after, like I say, 1.5 years, 2 years of that, I realized future children aren't going to want this 1990 stuff. This stuff's for me. And by the time I was in college, I was doing like any project that I could surrounded around Barbie. So always been into the dolls. And did collecting and customizing come first? I'd say neither, because I was never a collector. I played with the dolls as a kid and dressed them up. And then I found customizing. So it's like, I even feel weird calling what I have now my doll collection. It's my doll assortment, because I don't collect dolls. I do dolls. I do stuff with them. So what makes you decide what dolls get to stay and where do all the rest go? That comes and goes. I can look back at photos of dolls I don't have anymore and think, wow, I wish I still had those. But then I have a lot of dolls now. I am just now trying to keep more dolls instead of customizing them and then finding new homes for them. Generally, they go away through sale or trade because the stuff I've done is too weird to thrift. But I do, or to donate to thrift, but I do a lot of times, like you buy this doll with the articulated body and this doll with the cool head. You put the cool head on the articulated body, you put the unwanted head on the not articulated body, and then that doll will get donated back. So basically, I find like-minded people to sell or trade with, or sometimes I just put them in a box and send them to people unannounced. Although I'm not doing that as much as I used to because everybody is getting to the point where we all feel like we have too many dolls and need to cut down on accumulating them. But that doesn't stop us. Bane Nascent asks, do you use the design dolls in your current inspiration or do you have a queue? Both. I have a huge to-do list backlog queue of dolls that I want to reroute or customize or paint or whatever. But I also have dolls that I will just on a whim start working on. Like I have this doll, the Parisian Barbie from about 1980. I've wanted to reroute her in purple hair for at least a year now, if not closing in on 2 years. Obviously it hasn't been done, but this doll I rerouted on a complete whim. Like, what, about 2 months ago? Not long ago. So I'll have both. I'll have dolls who sit in the queue forever, and eventually I will sit down and do what I want to do with them, but then I have other dolls that I'll just get a wild notion and just out of nowhere decide to work on. Fiona's imagination. Thoughts on doll props? I love them, but I don't ever do anything with them. I used to have an enormous collection, like 2 or 3 big boxes of furniture and props and accessories and musical instruments. I had so many musical instruments. I had like a really realistic set of little drums and guitars and things. And I would put them in the box. I would open up the box and put a new thing in and look at everything else and say, oh, this is so cool, and then I would close the box and put them away. So I love to see people do dioramas. When I would do a diorama, I would set it up, take a picture, and then put it away. So it's just not my thing, even though they're so cool. And, let's see where it go. Fiona's Imagination also asks, how do you identify dolls? A big help is this book, which I'm pretty sure I've mentioned before. It's the Ultimate Barbie Doll Book by Marcy Melillo, or Melillo, I don't know how it's pronounced. It was printed in '96, so it lacks dolls from the last 20 plus years, but mostly it is just a very basic picture of the whole doll in the box and a close-up of the doll. And it's separated into Barbie, Barbie's friends, Barbie's little sisters, and Ken's. In the back, there's like store dolls and limited edition dolls, and it's a little weird that they're back there when they're not in with the regular issue dolls. And it doesn't have all the celebrity dolls that Mattel made in the 70s, and it doesn't have the non-Barbie, but Barbie-sized dolls that Mattel made, like Shani or the Guardian Goddesses. But in general, it's a pretty good reference. And when this doesn't have stuff, I go to eBay. eBay is great for identifying dolls. I will get just like a general year in mind, like anything after '96. If it's like, I can tell in general just what era a doll is from, so I'll go to eBay and like put in Barbie 1998 and just go through pages and find it. That also works with non-Barbie dolls. If you know the manufacturer, you can usually eventually wring the answer out of eBay, maybe. If not, ask somebody else. Other people, if you can't identify something, somebody else can. Minmo Kitty, what was your favorite childhood doll, and do you have one now? I have had this doll since I got her in like 1979 or 1980. I'd gotten a red-haired Darcy CoverGirl for Christmas, and I loved her because back then you couldn't find dolls who weren't blonde hair, blue-eyed Barbies. I was a little disappointed that the Darcy CoverGirl was red hair with blue eyes because everybody in my mom's family had red hair and brown eyes. And of course I didn't know about painting over dolls back then. So I loved that red-haired doll. And on the box I could have swore that she was shown doing the splits. So I wanted the doll to do the splits, and I ended up with most of the doll in this hand and the leg in the other hand. Mom tried, like, I remember she tried wiring the leg back on with floral wire. And eventually she realized that it wasn't going to work and that I had not broken the doll maliciously. So she took me to pick out the replacement. I remember walking into the store and seeing this whole end cap display of CoverGirl dolls. And of all of them, I picked out Dana CoverGirl. And this is that exact doll. So I have had her since I was little. She always worked into my Barbie stories. And then when I started buying gems in the mid-late 80s, she, of course, worked in with them. She was a music producer. I gave her this haircut. Honestly, I remember thinking, disco is dead. I'm going to give her a modern, new wave haircut as a kid, and it was, of course, terrible. I've recently been able to save her hair, finally restyle it a bit. But she wore a lot of turbans and borrowed a lot of Jerrica's hats with the gem dolls. So this is a doll I've had longer than any other doll in my collection. And yes, I need to wheel my chair. How did you start collecting dolls as an adult? Like I said, I never stopped. Or did you just never stop, right? Also, if we want to send you something, do you have a P.O. box? I do. You know my name is Andrea Wilson. It's P.O. Box 371, Hermitage, Tennessee 37076. And I'm not asking for people to send me stuff, but if you find something weird that you think I'd like, sure. Peculiar Doll Girl asks, do you keep a journal of ideas? If not, how do you keep track of them all? Sometimes I scribble down an idea, and then sometimes I lose where I scribbled it down and rediscover it a while later. Sometimes I sit down, like when I'm waiting for the kiddo to get home from school, and I will just sit down with a notebook and freeform scribble stuff. Sometimes I'll take half-formed ideas I have and try to make them more concrete by scribbling them. Most of the time, I'll just like throw parts together. Like, she is holding this hair because I want to reroute her with these hair colors. And every time I go past my box of bodies, I see her there. And eventually I'll get to it. So there are probably also things I've forgotten about wanting to do. Sometimes I'll get into the box and I'll see a doll holding a hair or a body holding a head, and then I'll decide that I'm not going to do that anymore, so I'll go ahead and take it apart. But generally, I just keep track of them by scribbling things or physically putting the stuff together. And that's the last question. So I hope this video isn't too long. I hope my answers were more satisfying than I feel like they were, because I feel like a lot of them are, I just do. Because I guess I think of doll customizing as something freeform. You can put a lot of thought into it, that is fine. You can put a lot of skill into it and come up with exactly what you had in your mind. Or you can throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And I am much more of a just seeing what happens if you do this to that doll with that material. And of course, the main thing is just have fun. If you don't think you're good, one thing I would say is you're probably better than you think you are. And the other thing is just keep trying, and eventually you will get to a point where you look at your own work and say, yeah, that's pretty good. So I hope I have dolls to share next week. If not, I might do another question and answer video. Because I might still be up to my eyeballs in Lego stuff. As I always say, we'll know next week. Thanks for watching.